This is CBC Winnipeg News.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us. If police won't search the landfill for remains of women who may have been the victims of a serial killer, their families say they will. The Harris sisters took that message to Ottawa today. And as the CBC's Stephanie Cram reports, Winnipeg police also tried to explain what's standing in the way of a search. A warning, this story contains distressing details.
Strong words from sisters who traveled to Ottawa desperate for change.
I should not have to stand here today, and I should not have to come here and be so mad and beg so that you will find and bring our loved ones home.
This is ridiculous, and you can't keep withholding this search. And if you won't look for them, then we will.
Morgan Harris is their mom. She's one of 4 Indigenous women allegedly killed by the same man. Harris's body was never found. The sisters thought she was in the Brady landfill. Now the victims' families have been told the remains are likely in Prairie Green landfill, just north of Winnipeg.
We acknowledge that the families are heartbroken. We acknowledge that they're angry, frankly. And we acknowledge that a lot of people are angry.
Police say factors like how much time has passed, the size of the landfill, and dangers like asbestos and animal remains make a search at Prairie Green difficult.
They had the nerve to put together this little PowerPoint of all the reasons why they won't search. And I didn't see one point on there saying why they should.
Cambria Harris showed her passion for safety of Indigenous women at this march 8 years ago.
I will not be next.
Now she's grieving her mother's death. Harris is one of 10 Indigenous women killed this year, the most in recent history.
I think it's disgusting. The police are trying to cover themselves because they know that they fail our women time and time again, and it needs to stop.
Victims Mercedes Myron and Morgan Harris are from Long Plain First Nation. Chief Kyra Wilson wants immediate help from the federal government.
So for me, the 2 priorities would be searches and a safe space for our Indigenous women and girls in Two-Spirit.
The meeting in Ottawa was the first time the Minister of Crown Indigenous Relations, Mark Miller, met with the Harris family.
This is the first time I meet the family, so I think it's uncomfortable for them to have my back turned to them because the government has turned their backs on them for centuries.
He said the tragedy is ongoing and called Winnipeg the epicenter of the crisis.
My mother didn't pass away with a home, so let's pay her the respect that she deserves by finally giving her one that's not a resting place at the Prairie Green landfill.
Harris says the family won't rest until her mother's home. Stephanie Cram, CBC News, Winnipeg.
We will bring you more from that emotional Ottawa news conference a little later in the newscast, including the full statements made by Morgan Harris's daughters. There is growing concern tonight about the number of vacant buildings in Winnipeg. As temperatures turn frigid, neighbors worry people will get hurt or maybe even killed trying to stay warm in one of them. CBC's Austin Gravish reports.
Smack dab in the middle of these 2 homes, rubble. All that's left from a house that burned to the ground last week.
I feel bad for the taxpayers on either side of this place that sat there wondering, not if, but when it was going to burn.
Tom Billis is the president of the United Firefighters of Winnipeg Union. He says the burned house on Manitoba Avenue, owned by the city, was a problem and had caught fire before.
You can see the damage though. This person takes pride in their house. It's a nice, humble house, and they got to deal with all this. And if this place had been torn down maybe after the first fire or once it was deemed unsalvageable, we avoid that.
Across Winnipeg, vacant houses keep burning. From April to October of this year, there were 62 vacant building fires.
If there's squatters, they're putting themselves at risk by trying to stay warm inside and have a fire.
Winnipeg Fire Paramedic Assistant Chief Scott Wilkinson says responding to fires in the vacant buildings is a massive safety risk. He showed us his house on Arlington as an example. It's already caught fire multiple times and is not structurally sound.
There's always the risk that the structure is not safe or could collapse. So we have to take a very, very cautious approach with our staff.
The city charges owners of boarded up buildings like this one yearly inspection and other fees. It says it has 655 different vacant buildings that are under its enforcement program. But Daniel McIntyre councillor Cindy Gilroy says the fines aren't working.
So sometimes they're getting off the hook. Depends on what those penalties and fines are for.
Gilroy wants to speed up how quickly the city can take down a derelict building and put fines for boarded up buildings on property taxes. She says too many are getting sent to collections agencies and the city never sees the cash.
We need to make sure that they're paying those fees because it comes out of the city's pocket. When we have a bylaw officer, a firefighter, our police come to this building.
The city's manager of community bylaw enforcement says the system is working as best it can under the current legislation. Winston Yee says most owners are following the rules, and his team is looking at ways to address owners who are not.
Our goal and our job is to bring it into compliance, and we don't stop until it does come into compliance.
Back on Manitoba Avenue, Billis hopes Councillor Gilroy's proposals go through.
Just get rid of these places that are a sitting matchbox,
so no one gets hurt this winter. Austin Grabish, CBC News, Winnipeg.
The Health Sciences Centre reports we are seeing a dip in admissions to the Children's Hospital in Winnipeg this week, but patient volumes are still high and doctors expect they'll get worse. The number of kids coming to Health Sciences Centre Children's Emergency was 161 today. That's down from the record of 200 set a month ago.
It's not 100% clear why we've seen somewhat lower patient volumes over the past week, but we expect this to be short-lived. We are just starting the winter season, which is when we see most viruses peak.
Doctors are still encouraging children and their parents to get the flu shot and to stay home when they're sick. The Assembly of First Nations is appointing a mediator to ease internal tensions. National Chief Roseanne Archibald announced that Murray Sinclair will help resolve conflict within the organization starting in the new year. Sinclair is the former chair of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. CBC's Olivia Stefanovich has the latest.
A show of unity as tensions between the National Chief and members of the Assembly of First Nations Executive Committee threaten to overshadow their meetings once again.
We made it, Chiefs. Thank you for continuing to stand by me and the regional chiefs.
Roseanne Archibald says they've overcome many barriers since the last assembly when First Nations leaders reinstated her as National Chief, an extraordinary move after the Executive Committee temporarily suspended Archibald because of a workplace investigation launched against her.
We will not perpetuate this ongoing conflict, and we will avoid unhealthy situations and seek the help of a mediator.
Archibald says Murray Sinclair, the former chair of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, will be appointed to that role in the new year.
We can't spend another minute, never mind a Chiefs Assembly, in turmoil. Our people are watching.
As Archibald moves forward, friction continues behind the scenes. CBC News has learned the AFN's chief executive officer is the fifth complainant to file a bullying and harassment complaint against Archibald.
I think the damage is just done and it's not repairable.
Even with the help of a mediator, some chiefs aren't confident the relationship between the National Chief and Executive Committee can be fixed.
Perhaps the AFN explores a new National Chief if we can't work together, because they have to work together.
But others are standing by Archibald.
I really see the National Chief doing that important work. She's not just in Ottawa, so I really think we do need that connection.
The next few months will be a big challenge, a chance for the National Chief and Executive Committee to prove they can set aside their differences or remain stuck in turmoil. Olivia Stefanovich, CBC News, Ottawa.
Well, this week we're experiencing some of the coldest nights we've had since last winter. It does have more people looking for warm places to sleep, but space in shelters is limited. Chelsea Kemp reports now on efforts to keep people warm.
A group of volunteers warm up after spending several hours walking downtown sidewalks, offering help to anyone suffering from the cold. They give what's needed: gloves, socks, even a warm bowl of soup.
So we're seeing people that are like starting to have their fingers blister. We've seen people that their fingers are turning black, and that's like extensive damage.
The city is now under an extreme cold weather warning, as is the majority of the province.
People still are unsheltered, and people still are outdoors overnight, and so that's a concern in terms of someone dying.
There are places to find shelter, but demand is high. One Just City is trying to meet these growing demands and has received a boost from Wolseley Miracle volunteers collecting food and clothing.
One of our guests came in one day with a pair of old flip-flops with their socks, and it was a day that was snowing, and it was really hard to see this person in the cold weather, and this was before this bitterly cold weather that we're experiencing now.
There's a call for more donations. Warm winter clothes, like jackets, boots, and mitts, and other items too, like bus tickets and laundry detergent. They want to help as many people as they can now, with many more cold nights ahead this winter. Chelsea Kemp, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Our weather specialist Riley Laychuk joins us now. So we have warnings in effect.
We do, actually. The majority of the province, even the majority of Western Canada, under an extreme cold warning right now. We can show you the graphic on that right now. So look at this big area of purple that I have to show you tonight. Frostbite on exposed skin could settle in just minutes. So do take care if you've got to be outside tonight or early in the morning tomorrow, really across southern Manitoba into parts of the north. Just because this area isn't under the warning doesn't mean it is going to be not cold by any means. In the southern part of the province, we are expecting wind chill factors to be close to that -45 range. So it'll feel closer to -45 on exposed skin. Could feel as cold as -50 in parts of northern Manitoba tonight. So definitely a cold one. Here is why we have clear skies across Manitoba, Saskatchewan, right into Alberta tonight. High pressure keeping us cold as we get into the overnight. Here is a look at your wake-up temperatures. You can see that we do have temperatures first thing in the morning tomorrow, right around or below -30 across most of Manitoba, even a -34 in the Pas tomorrow morning. Factoring in the wind chills, it is going to be really, really cold into the early morning tomorrow. So one of those nights we're going to want to plug in the car. You're also going to want to bundle up the kids before heading to school tomorrow. Even into the afternoon tomorrow, really not much of a reprieve. Temperatures around -20 in most of the province through the afternoon tomorrow. And even into the later part of the evening, really not seeing much of a reprieve. So tomorrow is just going to be one of those really cold days. Here's why. We have this area of high pressure here skirting along the international border. This will slide south as we get into Wednesday. Winds remaining out of the north into the early part of the morning. Then we start to see our winds shifting around out of the south. And as we get later into the day on Wednesday, as this high pressure area moves to the south of the border, you can see our flow changes out of the south, and these lines, these isobars, equal areas of barometric pressure really tightening up, and that will mean windier conditions through the day tomorrow. Winds gusting to about 50 at some points tomorrow afternoon. I'll show you that in a second. Thursday, looking like a mix of sun and cloud for most of the province. Into Friday, a mix of sun and cloud as well. Much calmer and much warmer conditions as we head toward the weekend. So tonight, winds are looking a lot calmer out of the north for the moment anyway. But look, as we get into Wednesday, winds really shift out of the south here and really start to pick up steam. Winds gusting up to 40, even 50 in some parts of the province into the afternoon tomorrow. So it's going to be a cold one tomorrow and definitely a windy one as well. Down to -25 right now. Winds out of the northwest at about 20 right now. Pressure is falling. Tonight in Winnipeg getting down to -32. Clear and cold. Frostbite on exposed skin in minutes tonight. So going to be a cold one to be outside this evening. Tomorrow morning, -31, sunny and cold with that risk of frostbite again. Then a few clouds rolling into the afternoon tomorrow. High of -22. Temperature does rise from there as we get into the early part of Thursday morning. -19 first thing in the morning Thursday, warming up to -10 in the afternoon. Then a chance of flurries as we head into Friday and Saturday. Much warmer than this heading into the weekend. I'll have those details coming up.
Weather update is brought to you by Home Equip. your trusted local source for Pride Mobility scooters. From sales to rental and repair, our team is here to serve you.
Actor, singer, songwriter, and philanthropist Tom Jackson is back at it again this winter, touring the country, playing concerts to support good causes. I spoke with him this afternoon as he prepared for tonight's performance in Winnipeg. Hello, Tom Jackson. Wonderful to chat with you again.
Hello. How are you?
I'm great. I know it's December. I know Christmas is coming because I get to have a wonderful interview with Tom Jackson. We're so spoiled to have you come visit this time of year, but we're used to you coming with Huron Carol, and you've changed the show a bit this year.
We did, mostly because of logistics. We, last year, went out on the road, and we didn't want people to be confused with the Huron Carol because we did a virtual show last year. So this year, we were fortunate enough to rise above the COVID issues and started out in New Westminster and going out to St. John's, Newfoundland.
Your beneficiary tonight's going to be Harvest Manitoba. Why is it that you would want to help the food bank? Why do you keep giving back?
Well, I've had a long-standing relationship with Harvest and with a number of food banks across the country. And I was looking for someone who helped homeless people when I started this project 34 years ago. And I'll tell you just a quick little story that I was living in a dark place in my life. I was the architect of that spot, and I had a visitor one night, and that visitor said to me, "I'm going to send you an angel that's going to be worse off than you, and if you help that angel, I'm going to help you." And I took the deal and I said, "How will I find the angel? Will it have wings?" And he said, "No, it won't." He said, "But you just go and find the angel." So I went looking and I realized very quickly that there were a lot of people that were worse off than me. And so I took the deal to find somebody who would ultimately bring me to you. And I realized that I wasn't that skilled at doing what I wanted to do, but food banks were, and other social service agencies were. So I ultimately became an advocate for organizations that are hands-on helping homeless people in this country, and other services now too.
So tonight you're performing starting at 7 at My Church Winnipeg, 955 Wilkes Avenue, with a couple of guys named Tom McKillop and John MacArthur Ellis. Tell us about tonight's show.
Well, tonight's show is, in fact, has a focus, and it's to make you healthy and happy. Happy is healthy and healthy is happy, and we want you to leave this show at the end of the day feeling joy, feeling, the lift from COVID and what we've been living under for 2 years. And if we design this show to get the funk out of your life and to help you save lives, help us save lives, and you get to see the show, then our job is done. I mean, it's the why, that's the why that separates us from others. You buy a ticket, you save a life. Stories and songs and Santa Claus is about giving a gift of life. This show is about resiliency and reinforcement, remembrance, reverence, and mostly celebration. And I learned from a great guy by the name of Alejandro Haddad, who said a social prescription is not something that you get out of a medicine cabinet. It's something that you feel that you can administer to yourself. And let me give you an example. Just close your eyes for 15 seconds. Okay, now think of 3 things that tickle your soul. And listen to my voice. I love you. Okay, open your eyes. Now, when we disconnect, when we're through with this interview, pick up a phone and phone somebody and tell them that you love them and ask them to do the same. And I guarantee you that if there's 1,000 people listening today, in 5 minutes, we'll have changed the world, because there will have been 2,000 people that realize that somebody loves them. And maybe in 5 minutes, maybe 10,000 we will have changed the world.
Tom Jackson, you've changed the world. You've made it a kinder place. Thank you for being with us.
Don't forget I love you.
If you ever miss our newscast, you want to watch something again, you know you can find it all on our CBC Manitoba YouTube channel. You can play that interview for someone if you like. Still to come tonight, Canada's Auditor General grades the federal government's response to COVID-19. The story after the break. An audit of the federal government's pandemic spending concludes the rollout of vaccines and financial benefits was swift, but it was wasteful. The Auditor General has released 2 reports on Ottawa's response, and CBC's Marina von Stackelberg has the details.
Canada did not.
The Auditor General says the federal government's COVID-19 benefit programs rolled out fast, and without them, Canada's poverty rate would have doubled.
We found overall that they were quite effective in meeting the government's objectives of first getting support out to individuals and employers quickly, minimizing the increase in poverty or income inequalities, and also helping the economy bounce back from the pandemic.
But the audit found Ottawa gave out billions of dollars in CERB payments it shouldn't have. She's identified $4.6 billion in overpayments. Only half of that money has been repaid so far. And she's flagged an extra $27.4 billion in pandemic relief that needs to be investigated. Half of that money could have gone to businesses that didn't qualify. She says in its rush to hand out checks quickly, the government limited its checks on applicants.
And that's why the hard work is now needed when you minimize prepayment to do rigorous post-payment work to identify who is really ineligible.
But she says the government's efforts to find and recoup that money are not thorough or fast enough.
What is their plan on how they intend to deal with it, and how much are taxpayers going to be on the hook for the administrative costs to pursue these individuals?
A lot of Canadians have paid back these overpayments. A lot have negotiated repayment agreements. So we are trying to balance risk and fairness.
The Auditor General also found that Canada wasted millions of COVID-19 vaccine doses. As of this spring, 50 million surplus doses were earmarked for donation to other countries, but less than 1/3 were given away, and nearly 14 million expired before they could be.
The goal was to ensure that every Canadian who wanted to be vaccinated could have access to vaccines, and that was achieved.
Since Canada didn't have its own factories to make COVID-19 vaccines, the Auditor General says it was smart of the government to enter into agreements with several companies to purchase them before the shots were even manufactured. But doing that meant some doses would be wasted. Marina von Stackelberg, CBC News, Ottawa.
Today we mark the 33rd anniversary of the mass shooting at École Polytechnique in Montreal. On this day in 1989, a gunman motivated by a hatred of feminists walked into the engineering school and murdered 14 female students. 13 other people were wounded. Today, a wreath ceremony was held to remember the victims. Wreaths at the school are being placed as well. Flags are flying half-mast. Another ceremony took place at dusk. That was the time the first shots were fired. It featured 14 beams of light, one for every woman who lost her life. The anniversary was declared the National Day of Remembrance and Action on Violence Against Women in 1991. We heard that numbers of children going to the ER here in Winnipeg have gone down for now, but respiratory infections in children have been raging right across the country, and healthcare systems have been struggling to keep up. Some have been forced to cancel services while others are juggling resources. Deanna Sumanak-Johnson has this report.
It was a parent's nightmare, a 3-year-old with high fever that wouldn't come down, and one hospital after another too busy to treat him until they found a walk-in clinic that could.
Going around and just trying to find help, begging on doors, like I can't believe that in 2022 that's what we're doing.
A surge in kids' respiratory infections, especially the flu, continues to stretch resources at pediatric hospitals across the country, with admissions 10 times higher than usual.
12 children's hospitals are tracking data. In the last week of November, we saw 223 admissions to the hospital for children suffering from side effects of the flu. This number would typically be 10, 11, 12 kids a week.
The evidence of crisis is everywhere. Ottawa's Children's Hospital of Eastern Ontario bringing in the Red Cross this week to support staff. In Calgary, a pediatric hospice discharging its respite patients because staff were urgently needed at the local children's hospital. Stories like those prompting anger and vague responses from the authorities.
We're going to make sure we're listening to the best advice from experts and public health authorities.
Help is coming. Our system is under strain. There's no doubt about that. And this is not just unique to, Albertans Children's Hospital.
We still have time to blunt the impact of this transmission by getting people vaccinated.
Experts say concrete solutions are needed now.
We have to, number one, increase capacity in our healthcare system so we can absorb these things when they happen. But we also have to try to prevent these things from happening in the first place.
Experts say the best thing Canadians can do to help protect their kids is to give them the flu shot, something only a small number of kids under the age of 4 have received. And while there seems to be no political will to bring back mandates, many experts recommend masking, especially when in crowded indoor spaces. Deanna Sumanak-Johnson, CBC News, Toronto.
A high-stakes runoff election is taking place today south of the border in Georgia to decide who will represent the state in the U.S. Senate. Neither candidate cleared the threshold to win in the November midterms. CBC's Magda Gabrisalasa has more on the significance of today's vote.
A win for Republicans would mean much of the same at the Senate, a 50-50 split where the vice president is the tie-breaking vote. But a win for the Democrats would bring some wiggle room when all the party senators don't vote the same way. Overall, 51 seats for the Democrats would make it easier to pass legislation and push President Joe Biden's nominees for various big jobs through, including judges. So all eyes are on Georgia, and the candidates have made their final pitches to voters.
We must remain focused. The race is not given to the swift nor to the strong, but to the one who endures till the end.
Vote, 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 flood the polls. Don't go home. It opened at 7 a.m. I'm not going to sleep tonight because before a big game, I don't sleep because I'm ready.
Getting out the vote doesn't seem to be a problem. The record for early voting has been broken, with more than 1.8 million people doing just that.
Just getting another voice in there, Republican voice, so I'm for that.
I feel like things are a toss-up these days. What things you expect would be in the bag, you're not sure.
I'm a big Herschel Walker fan from the Bulldogs back in the 80s, but you know what? He doesn't have senator material.
I still do think that it's kind of proof that Trump can't just back candidates and have them win with no substance, that you have to put somebody better up. You know, the Republicans expect more.
While polls may say that Warnock has the advantage over Walker, all that matters is what happens after all the votes are in and counted. Magda Gabrisalasa, CBC News, Washington.
Still ahead, protecting biodiversity. We look at the challenges facing the COP15 summit in Montreal. Then Riley Laychuk brings you the Manitoba forecast. You're watching CBC Winnipeg News. The United Nations COP15 Biodiversity Summit kicked off today in Montreal. Leaders and experts from nearly 200 countries are taking part, all of them aiming to protect and preserve different environments and species. As Jayla Bernstein reports, delegates seem to have their work cut out for them.
Without nature, we have nothing. Without nature, we are nothing. Nature is our life support system.
Thousands of people representing nearly 200 countries all gathered in Montreal to hammer out a once-in-a-decade agreement to protect nature.
If we can't agree as a world on something as fundamental as protecting nature, well, nothing else matters.
This giant room is where delegates will be meeting, spending some long hours negotiating an international pact to halt and reverse biodiversity loss. It's no easy task.
The negotiation will be difficult, no doubt, because there is a huge change at play, huge interest, etc. But I have not seen anybody saying they don't want an agreement.
One key goal is called the 30 by 30 target. It aims to conserve 30% of land, fresh water, and oceans by 2030. Adding urgency is the fact that the rate of global species extinction is accelerating. The latest UN report found that more plants and animals are threatened with extinction than ever before.
75% of the land globally degraded, marine environment 66% polluted, wetlands 85% degraded, coral reefs 50% have already disappeared. And the statistics goes on and on and on.
Countries, including Canada, failed to meet the last biodiversity target set in 2010. The lessons learned, they need more specific goals and the money to back them up. Negotiations kick off with this draft agreement already on the table, but after months of work, it's still riddled with sticking points.
There are, yes, sticking points. Key among them is the finance question, finance for implementation, resources for implementation of the framework.
Still, hopes are high. Delegates want this summit to be the Paris moment for nature, where nations will rally to preserve biodiversity the same way they set the bar for tackling climate change in 2018. Jayla Bernstein, CBC News, Montreal.
Riley Laychuk joins us once again, our weather specialist. You know, there's biodiversity and then there's diversity of opinion as to whether you want more snow or not. There are people like me who are lazy and don't like to shovel, and then there are folks who love to get out there and cross-country ski or to get their skidoos out, whatever.
Yeah. So, most of the province under a pretty decent snowpack. In fact, most of Western Canada actually already under a pretty decent snowpack for winter. I can show you some of the numbers here. As we look at Western Canada right now, we'll zoom into Manitoba here, and you can see the Parkland region in particular and up into northern Manitoba. Good 30, 40 centimeters of snow on the ground in northern Manitoba, so that's fairly good for right now. The place that we are lacking is this extreme southwest corner of the province. I was in Brandon maybe a week ago, and there really was not a lot of snow on the ground the further west you go in Manitoba. So that just gives you a sense of the difference that, a few kilometers can make in some cases. Winnipeg, a very good 11 centimeters on the ground right now. So this cold weather really does extend out across Western Canada as well. We are in the minus 30s already, minus 34 in Saskatoon this hour, almost minus 30 in Regina as well, into the minus 20s across Alberta, and a lot warmer on the other side of the Rockies. And this cool weather does extend across into northwestern Ontario as well, but southern Ontario and southern Quebec enjoying some fairly warm temperatures into the low single digits at this point. So 25 under the freezing mark at the airport, minus 20 at the Forks across southern Manitoba this hour, minus 26 already in Brandon, minus 29 in Swan River, and these temperatures really will just drop as we get into the evening tonight through into tomorrow morning. In northwestern Ontario, some lingering cloud cover still. We will see that clearing out tonight. Temperatures around that -30 mark tonight, -24 in Fort Francis. A little more cloud cover still to clear out through northwestern Ontario this evening. Mainly clear skies, some lingering cloud cover through the southeastern part of Manitoba down into the -30s tonight. -32 for Winnipeg, Brandon tonight -31, -33 in Swan River under a clear sky. Clear skies for the most part in northern Manitoba. A few high-level clouds. -34 in the Paw, up around the -30s for the northeastern part of Manitoba as well. And the temperatures rebounding a little bit. Periods of snow through Flin Flon and the Paw tomorrow. -19, -27 in Lynn Lake, -21 under a mix of sun and cloud in Norway House tomorrow. Southwestern Manitoba, sun and cloud tomorrow. Temperatures getting up to about that -15, -16 mark. All right. Kind of in that same region through southeastern Manitoba, down around -20 under the sunshine in Emerson, -19s into southeastern Manitoba and northwestern Ontario. Also looking at mainly sunny skies tomorrow, -18, -19 for Kenora and Dryden, -20 in Red Lake. Temperatures much warmer than this on the way in your 7-day forecast, Janet.
Looking forward to that.
Yes.
This won't do anything.
Still ahead, the families of two of the women allegedly killed by a serial killer want help to search for their loved ones' remains. Their emotional pleas to the federal government after the break. We wanted to bring you more of the powerful statements made in Ottawa today by the daughters of murder victim Morgan Harris. These young women traveled from Winnipeg with a number of people who are there demanding the federal government address the ongoing crisis of missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit people. The emotional news conference started with a local member of Parliament, Leah Gazan.
This is a nonpartisan issue. This is a human rights issue. This is a life and death issue. We have had a national inquiry that was released in 2015 with a failure to act. And I'm glad to have Minister Miller here. And I've been working with Minister Miller to ensure that his government finds immediate resources for families, for searches. We need money for searching. We need money for prevention, like the red dress alert, like money for shelters, emergency placements. We need immediate resources to mitigate the violence that is being perpetrated against our women, girls, and Two-Spirit. I am honored to also be joined by Hilda Anderson-Pierce, who has been an advocate for families. And I also join in their calls for justice. It's time for the government to act. And as I said, I'm glad that I'm joined by the minister today, who I will be working with to ensure resources are immediately provided to families and communities.
Hello. I'm absolutely heartbroken and utterly shocked at what is happening to our people, and what is happening is an ongoing genocide time and time again. The government constantly, and the system that was put in place that was meant to protect and harm, or protect these women from harm, completely fails them time and time again, miserably. Last night, I sat down with members of the Winnipeg Police Service, and I feel very wrong, and I am so heartbroken to be able to say this. And it shouldn't be me saying this, but there has been some misinformation going around the public saying that these women are at Brady landfill, and that's incorrect. They believe that these three women, Morgan Harris, Mercedes Myron, and Buffalo Woman, which I find so beautiful that the elders gave her a name, they believe that they're in the Prairie Green landfill, and the police won't do anything, and they say that they can't search because it's not feasible. Is human life not feasible? Time and time again, our Indigenous women and brothers and sisters have to come here, and we have to shout, and we have to raise our voices begging for change and begging for justice for our people. And that is wrong. I should not have to stand here today, and I should not have to come here and be so mad and beg so that you will find and bring our loved ones home. My mother didn't pass away with a home, so let's pay her the respect that she deserves by finally giving her one. That's not a resting place at the Prairie Green landfill, and for these other women as well. I think it's disgusting. The police are trying to cover themselves because they know that they fail our women time and time again, and it needs to stop. Your government started this genocide, and now it is your turn to help us end it. Miigwech.
I'd now like to call Kira Harris, a daughter of Morgan Harris.
Hello. This is a very unfair situation. I do not agree with how this is being handled. These are people who you are leaving alone in the landfill. These are human beings. How can you even fathom the idea to leave them there? These women are deserving of a proper resting place, not to be left alone in a landfill in the dead of winter. If you want to respect and honor them, stop making excuses as to why you can't find them. You can. You are just refusing to. You are the police. You are here to help our community and give right to the citizens. How is this doing your job? If you can't find them, then why haven't you asked for help? Why can't you ask for help nationwide rather than just having a small amount of people conduct the searches? All of your reasons are just meaningless excuses in this important case. These are 4 women. 1 you have found, but now you refuse to find the last 3. What is the reasoning for that? We have the people who are willing to help and do the work for you, but you are not accepting it. What is the thought process behind this? This is ridiculous, and you can't keep withholding this search. And if you won't look for them, then we will. Thank you.
For me, I just want to say that we have a very clear message here today, and that message is that we need the supports when it comes to our missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls in Two-Spirit. Not only do we need those supports and services for the families, but we need them for the communities. And I just want to say thank you for Minister Miller being here today. It's very important that we shout out loud to what it is that we're needing, because we've been saying this for many years. And once again, we are here today to talk about missing Indigenous women. And it's so hurtful that we are always having to talk about the same issue. For me, the last few days has been extremely difficult, you know, trying to navigate everything that has, you know, happened and all the information that's coming, and trying to support, you know, the families here today. And actually, this is my family. You know, I'm really sad to have to be here today to speak on this matter. And the clear message is that we need those supports and services. We have 231 calls to justice. We need searches, we need supports, and it needs to start now. There hasn't been much that has been done when it comes to missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls in Two-Spirit. There has been money identified for these supports, for these searches, and something needs to be done today. And I'm really hoping that, you know, the federal government will act today, and it should have been yesterday. You know, we've had so many women have gone missing, and it just hurts my heart to have to stand here, especially when we're talking about 2 women from Long Plain First Nation, and it's very clear that there are supports that are needed. And I just want to say that right now we have communities that are hurting, our nations are hurting again, and we just need that support and that love and that respect and that acknowledgement. So I just want to say miigwech for everyone being here today, and I really hope that we will be able to have a clear idea of what is going to take place when it comes to a plan of action for our missing, murdered Indigenous women and girls in Two-Spirit. Miigwech. Thank you.
Stories like this can be triggering to many people, especially people who have survived violence. Support is available. There are phone numbers we're putting up on your screen now. You can contact Gunnigan Laychuk for support, 204-594-6500. Support is also available through MKO by calling 1-800-442-0488. You will also find all these numbers at the bottom of the story on our website, cbc.ca/Manitoba. Riley Laychuk is in next with your 7-day forecast. You're watching CBC Winnipeg News.
All right, here's a look at that extreme cold warning, once again extending well into, well, all of southern Manitoba, parts of the north, Saskatchewan, Alberta, northwestern Ontario. Really cold temperatures tonight across the province. Minus 32 tonight. Cold conditions tomorrow with a minus 22 for a forecast high. Bit on the breezy side tomorrow. Things do warm up. Look at this. Minus 3 with some breezy conditions on Saturday. And then we see temperatures close to the freezing mark once again. Minus 1s for Sunday and Monday. Minus 2 with periods of snow on Tuesday. So it gets better. This next video might make your heart grow 3 sizes as well, just like the Grinches did in that famous movie.
Oh, that's right, his heart grew. Everyone's favorite Christmas curmudgeon is in our Daily Lift tonight. Who knew the Grinch could move like that? Who knew? I did not know the Grinch could move like that, but really that's not the Grinch, that's Chance Bear, and Chance is a longtime powwow dancer. He started dressing up as the Dr. Seuss character in 1917. 1917, that would be 105 years ago, to make his kids smile. Now his Grinch moves have become a fixture at events at the Cree Nation in Saskatchewan where he lives, Ochapaway.
That's cool.
That is cool, especially for a guy who's over a century old, right?
Yeah.
Good night, everybody. No math, please, no math.